Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we'll be discussing the topic if going woke is what cost the Raptors the 2020 NBA championship. Now for those who are not big Toronto Raptors fans like me, you may not realize that the Toronto Raptors were actually the heavy favorites to win the finals this year. Because Kawhi Leonard, we were actually playing better without him on our team. But the funny thing is that I actually did really like Kawhi for one thing or a few things. He helped us win the championship by bringing in some great offense and defense, but the thing he brought most to our city was accountability. In Toronto, for years and years and years, we used to play under our star players like Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, but they were kind of the crybaby victimhood mentality type players. They were great during the regular season, but when it came down to the playoffs, they always blamed the refs for their poor play instead of taking the responsibility on for themselves. So next what I'll do is give a quick breakdown of the very definition of victimhood. Victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to recognize or consider themselves a victim of the negative actions of others. The term is also used to reference the tendency for blaming one's misfortunes on someone else's misdeeds, which is also referred to as victimism, similar to like blaming the refs for playing very poorly. Kyle Lowry was very famous for that, and he also holds the record for the NBA's worst shooting percentage. So Kyle, I really don't think that the refs were preventing your shots from going in. It might have been actually you. Criminals often engage in victim thinking, believe themselves to be moral, and engaging in a crime only as a reaction to an immoral world, and furthermore feeling that authorities are unfairly singling them out for persecution. It's like, where have we heard this before? The entire Black Lives Matter movement with the NBA has been blaming police for being racist. And some of the Toronto Raptors players have even insinuated that this problem is even occurring in Canada. So what they would do is kind of insinuate that Toronto police have been wrongfully arresting black people. And I thought that was a little bit strange. Why? I'll show you the evidence next. Here we have the Toronto police chief, or our old police chief before Black Lives Matter got him to resign, and his name was Police Chief Mark Saunders. And this is what Mark Saunders looked like. He was our greatest police chief in Toronto history. And to be honest, Toronto has had a really bad crime problem occurring in the black community in our city. And to blame the police for arresting them too much seems a little bit odd because the police are black. So that's another thing I think Canada's done in the future to anticipate this problem. It's not just Toronto, but other cities in Toronto or in Canada have also placed black police officers in large numbers, including the chief. And I'm not trying to blame this whole crime problem in Toronto on the black community themselves. I think that it's more to do with the gang activity in Toronto, and it tends to be a lot of the gang members are black. And I think it's because the black family structure is lacking father figures, and it's not just theirs, but every culture in the city is lacking father figures these days, and it seems to be hitting the black community the worst. Now, is that something to be ashamed of? I think having a strong family unit and being dependent on that is a good trait. It's like, I also think having a father figure in your life is very important. Now let's read over what happened when Black Lives Matter tried to meet with Mark Saunders to blame him for the police arresting too many black people in Toronto. And for anyone who doesn't realize how bad the black community violence has gotten in Toronto, we're averaging 2 shootings per night. That's almost worse than New York City prior to this whole lockdown situation. Now let's read here what Toronto Police Chief said. Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders says that he didn't visit with the Black Lives Matter protest because he didn't feel it would lead to a meaningful contribution to the debate about how police interact with people of color. It does almost seem like a ridiculous statement. Why would a black police officer wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to go be racist to other black people? So it turns out these protesters camped outside the police headquarters for weeks, starting in March, and this was back a long time ago, back in 2016. they were already blaming the black police officers for being racist to other black people. Right, so the protesters who camped outside the headquarters for weeks were demanding answers about police shootings, including one that led to the death of Andrew Laku last summer. Saunders told Matt Galloway that the protesters stated demands of him that were not reasonable. Their specific demand for me was identifying the person who shot Andrew and charge him with murder. Where have we heard this before? And that was going to happen, and that wasn't going to happen. Number one, it isn't lawful, and number two, he was not going to do that. Plus, he says to go out there and have a YouTube moment of people yelling, that wasn't going to move anything further. So yeah, that's what I'm starting to wonder, like even back in 2016, we seen that this Black Lives Matter protest stuff was accomplishing nothing. Blaming police for arresting black people is just freaking ridiculous. Now, sadly, Mark Saunders ended up having to resign. Why? Because Black Lives Matter made him kneel down in front of a huge crowd of people and apologize this year. So he decided after being forced to do that, he wanted nothing more to be with the police chief of Toronto. And that's a real shame, because he was our best police chief ever. So thanks, Black Lives Matter. You got rid of the best black police chief in the fucking country. Even the very concept of saying that racism is a serious problem in Canada just completely ignores all of Canadian history. Previous years, I think the Toronto Raptors had gone on team excursions to learn a little bit the Underground Railroad, how Canada has like a long history of helping to free slaves from the US. In all, 30,000 slaves fled to Canada, many with the help of the Underground Railroad, a secret network of tunnels to free blacks and white sympathizers who helped the runaways. Canada was viewed as a safe haven where black people could be free. So really, I think all the Toronto players or Toronto Raptor players that are accusing Canada of being systematically racist should be ashamed of themselves. So I think that's the most important thing Kawhi Leonard brought to our city and brought to our team, was we started to finally distance ourselves from this victimhood mentality thinking and saying that the refs are not out to get all Canadian teams. And I'm not trying to say that victimhood mentality is something that I'm immune from. It happens to me all the time. Every time I get someone who's a woman who does something bad to me as an authority figure, my first instinct is to say, oh, it's the women out to get the men. But usually after sleeping on it, I tend to realize like, hey, I'm starting to get caught up into victimhood mentality, and it's not healthy. Now, for years and years and years, when I was watching the Toronto Raptors play, that was the one problem that we had with our superstar player, DeMar DeRozan. He was very into this idea that everyone was out to get us because we're Canadians, and that no other superstars wanted to come here because it was north of the border, which could partially be true, I'm sure. But to get that sort of victimhood mentality was bringing down the whole team. So yeah, we never ever had a chance when DeMar DeRozan was leading us in the playoffs, because during the regular season the refs tend to give him good calls, but when it came time to the playoffs, it was up to him. He couldn't just get to the free throw line every time. He actually had to win on his own merit, and he just couldn't do it. And boy, did he throw a lot of temper tantrums. I think he even stormed off the court in his last game when he was ejected for fouls. So, I do not think it was any coincidence that when Kawhi Leonard arrived and got rid of our victimhood mentality for our team, that is when we started to play better. And it was going great. Even this year, we still had the best record ever without even Kawhi on our team, because prior to the whole lockdown situation, we didn't really have a strong victimhood mentality going. We were actually starting to still retain some of that pride of being responsible for our own actions. And that pride even carried over into a bit of the after the lockdown situation. I'll show you here that when the Toronto Raptors were playing in the playoffs before the huge Black Lives Matter protest, we managed to not only beat the Nets, but we got our first ever season sweep. So we were on the hottest roll imaginable. And as you can see here, I was choosing the Lakers to lose because the Lakers were playing really bad for the first round of the playoffs. So I was thinking they weren't even going to make it to the second round. But then, guess what happened? Then, after we had the victimhood start, this is when players like Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell started to blame police again for the actions of black criminals. So I was like, man, if you have a criminal that's being arrested and resisting arrest and he gets beat up bad or even killed by police, the only person responsible for that is themselves. Like, police are not going around beating up and arresting random people, especially not because of their color of their skin. Hell, half the time the police aren't even white or any, if they even are black or Asian or whatever, right? So why would a multicultural police force go around arresting people for no reason, right? So just so happens that after, let's bring it up here. Yeah, we can see here that one of our team captains, Fred VanVleet, and then one of our best players, Norman Powell, started to get all upset, starting to blame that whole victimhood mentality thing again. They were helping to organize it, and it really, really changed the complexion of our season. And it was kind of interesting too that LeBron James bought right into it and was like, hey, my team is tanking this year in the playoffs. Let's cancel it all so that I don't lose. Yeah, so then that's what happened. Now, after we all sat out and had that big protest, then all of a sudden all the Toronto players started acting like victims. And it was like interesting that the entire NBA was also doing this with the Black Lives Matter protest stuff. I'm not going to get into the victimhood mentality and say that the NBA knew that the Raptors had a susceptibility to victimhood, and then in doing this, encouraging all the victimhood was in a way helping the Lakers win the championship. There are people that are saying that the Lakers were going to win no matter what, that it was like a WWE event, that Adam Silver had determined that the Lakers should win because of everything bad that happened with Kobe, and that LA needed a really big boost with how bad their economy and everything and their whole post-pandemic situation is going. So lo and behold, the Raptors, after having an amazing season and an amazing first round against the Nets, after this big playoff or big Black Lives Matter protest, they came back and against the season against the or series against the Celtics, and they completely tanked. They started having the worst freaking games of their whole season. Another player that led the charge on this victimhood mentality was Norman Powell. Now, some people might say that Norman Powell had a good playoff series, and I think his numbers technically were very good, better than they've ever been in his career. But when it came time to the clutch shots, the ones we needed to win the game, tie the games, or even fourth quarter, he played like garbage. So you could tell that it was like his nerves or everything were off. His game was shot. And to ask why, Norman Powell was one of the biggest people when it came to the victimhood. He had victimhood mentality so bad that he wanted to write on his jersey, "Am I next?" Because he believed that police were randomly going around killing black people for no reason and that he was going to be next. Now, do you really think that a player with that type of mindset was in the right mode to be in the NBA championship finals? I don't think so. Now, in defense to Norman, he was one of my favorite players before he got into this victimhood mentality. When he came from the G League or the D League, the previous league for getting development, he was amazing. He was like a hard nose, taking responsibility for his actions, no bullshit for anything. He always had like a grimace on his face, like he wasn't going to be blaming anyone. He was going to take his actions into his own hands and get things accomplished. But that same fire was gone. After that protest for the Black Lives Matter, the only fire he had was blaming his problems on other people. And when Kyle Lowry was asked to speak on the subject, he added onto his jersey that he wanted education reform because he believed that his kids were being raised to be racists. And then it was nice. One of the actual reporters from the Toronto media asked Kyle, "So who is it that is teaching your kids to be racist? Who is their teacher, Kyle?" And guess what Kyle's response was? His kids are homeschooled. So I was like, oh geez, like you're blaming the teachers now for teaching your kids to be racist, but you're the one teaching them. So here we have in the center, our best player after Kawhi Leonard left is Pascal Siakam. He was having a great season and he was going to be the player to carry us to the finals. But it just so happens in this whole thing after the pandemic, his game started to fall apart. It's like he was no longer seeming like he even cared about being on the court. And I started to wonder, maybe was it Nick Nurse had said that Pascal had conditioning issues, but I do not believe that is the case. Pascal Siakam was a very good soccer player before, and he's never had or shown any signs of conditioning issues for the Toronto Raptors in the entire time he's been on our league or on our team, even after the off seasons. So I don't believe that that is the case. What I think it was the victimhood mentality coming from Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell all getting into his head, because maybe they were convincing him that Toronto police were actually racist. Now, after we started to lose the series to Boston, a lot of Canada's heartbeats were just going wild, because we were thinking, Jesus, like we were one of the best teams in the entire NBA league, and now we're losing to one of the worst teams, Boston, and what was causing this? And it was hard to find out the answer. So in the end, what happened? Were the Toronto Raptors able to come out of this slump of getting into the victimhood mentality? Sadly, no, they were not. They were able to blame all of their problems on others, didn't take responsibility for their own actions, and ended up losing to the Boston Celtics. And after the Toronto Raptors were eliminated, did LeBron James decide that he wanted to sit out again and make sure that the NBA was going to stop racism by preventing the NBA championships to continue? No. After the Toronto Raptors were eliminated, then all of a sudden, LeBron James was fine with the season continuing. He didn't want to sit out anymore. And let's check. All of a sudden, LeBron James was very happy and laughing his ass off. His biggest threat for losing the NBA championship was eliminated, leaving a very hapless NBA or Miami Heat team to be his only thing stopping him. And I congratulate Jimmy Butler for proving that he was the better player in that series, but he couldn't do it all on his own. LeBron was stacked with a team of all All-Stars, just like every other time that he's ever won in his whole victimhood career. Now here, I don't want to get caught up into the same sort of thinking that maybe the NBA was inspired or conspiring against the Toronto Raptors to help LeBron James win, because that really is just another victimhood thing. So I'd like to say congratulations to LeBron. You managed to win this season, but I hope next year the Toronto Raptors can ditch all the players that have been bringing our team down with this victimhood mentality, and we can face LeBron with some actual players that will take responsibility for their own actions and not blame the police for being racist. And then that way, LeBron will not get the last laugh, we will. So what do you guys think? As Toronto Raptors fans or other fans of teams around the league, did you think the Toronto Raptors were going to win this year? Do you think it was the lockdown and Pascal Siakam's poor conditioning that caused him to all of a sudden his game fall apart? Or do you think it was the team captains like Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Norman Powell that all started to get back into that old rhythm of Toronto Raptors victimhood mentality? And do you think that the NBA realized that the Toronto Raptors were going to be susceptible to such a thing? And that's one of the reasons why, in order to rig the league, in order to help LeBron win, that they brought back the entire victimhood in the most bold way they had ever done, ever before? Now, part of me wants to thank the Toronto Raptors for an amazing season, and I hope that they have another great season next year. But another part of me is thinking, geez, maybe it was going woke that caused us to lose the NBA championship in 2020. Alright, thanks again everyone for watching this episode, and if you'd like to help out the show, I've got a way that you can do it. Now, I've been starting to use the free Bitcoin Casino the most trusted online casino for Bitcoin. It's a lottery page. It's got gambling. It's got betting. It's got a earn with interest rate. And it also has a free spin that all my viewers can do every hour. And then you can use this money and then start using it on the site. And I encourage players to only use what they can afford to lose. So right now I'm at 34,307 Satoshi, and Satoshi is the mini Bitcoins that if you get enough will add up to 1 Bitcoin, sort of like pennies. Now let's do a roll. 34,307, boom, 34,325 Satoshi. Woohoo! And I also have here another list of ways you can help out my show with joining my patrons. Society 6, I have Finishing Quick as my specialty t-shirts and other merchandise. It also comes on bed sheets, which is very popular with the ladies. And then Swagbucks is where you can buy some great purchases online. It's a discount service similar to Air Miles, and instead of getting Air Miles, you get cash back percentages, usually that you can cash out in Amazon gift cards. And it also helps you find the codes in order to get even better prices. GameKit is where you can get paid to be a video gamer expert professional. They'll try to pay you money to play video games. It's not a lot, but depending how much you love games, it might work out great. And then Hideout TV is a place similar to YouTube where you can watch videos. And it's different from YouTube that they split the ad revenue between the creators and the viewers. So if you'd like to make a little bit of extra coin while watching stuff online, I highly recommend checking out Bitcoin. Bitcoin or Hideout TV is the one for the videos, and Bitcoin is the one I just did the lottery spin for. The Virtual Mate Sex Machine is a sex toy for adults and men only, but if ladies need a sex machine, they know who they can call. Just kidding, unless you're near Toronto. Alright, big shout out. I tried not to be too negative in this video. I hope everyone likes it. I tried to stay unbiased about whether or not it actually was the Raptors' fault or the wokeness. So what do you guys think? I hope to hear some great comments in the chat and try to keep it clean if you can, but I don't censor, just like I don't believe that police are the ones to be blamed for the violence pandemic affecting the entire globe these days. Alright, take care everyone, and make sure, if you want to help the show, check out the Bitcoin Casino. Take care everyone. Bye for now. Here's a subscribe button and 2 more videos for you to check out. See you later. Let's go Raptors!